Games Workshop recently announced that we'll soon be getting the 9th edition of Warhammer 40,000. They made this announcement with a cinematic trailer which shows Space Marines, Sisters of Battle, and I think some other units coming together and fighting against Necrons. Necrons are these like chrome robots with green glowing stuff all over them, things like that. I thought it was super cool, and also I've been wanting to do a woodwork project for a little while. I haven't really made anything out of wood for some time other than the trees in my last video kind of. So I thought, why not use something from the recent announcement and combine it with my desire to make a little woodwork project. And so that is what I did. This is my little Necron artifact that I made. It's all scratch built. I put it together over the course of maybe 4 or 5 days. I had access to a woodworking shed, and yeah, I went ahead and made this. You could make it out of foam board or other materials if you wanted to. You could probably even make it out of polystyrene if you wanted, with some hot wire cutters. I've done a few short videos recently and I wanted to do a bit of a longer one on a project that I've done. So without further ado, here's how I made this. So the first thing that I did was looked up some logos. I was looking at Ultramarines first. I was thinking about maybe doing Tyranids. Cake is optional, recommended though. So yeah, I found a Necrons logo and an Ultramarines one. Yeah, happy days, let's go with that. Next, printed it. Printed 2 copies. Luckily had access to this woodwork shop. Thought it was quite funny to have like a space robot piece of art in like a full-on wood, old school wood shop. Cut it out. Cut out 2 because you need to create 2 different layers. Print stick ran out, so I had to get my fingers in there and get dirty. You can be more tidy if you like. I recommend being more tidy than I am. Also, I'm not a woodworker. This is kind of just finding my way as I go. Yeah, here I'm identifying that I need to cut out the top section with the following lines to have the sort of top bit showing up, and the back section with the glow coming through. We'll just have to have that thin bit cut. Here I'm using a bandsaw just to do the rough shape of the outlines. This is sped up 10 times, I believe. Just it's also really noisy, this stage, like you wouldn't want to hear it even at 10 times. Okay, here I've got the 2 pieces. They're not perfectly going together, but it's close enough. We're going to sand that later. Next we're going to need to use a scroll saw in order to just do some of the more intricate cutting. Needed to drill a hole in order to get the blade in to start cutting. This is I think this is only the second time I've ever used a scroll saw, which you'll probably be able to tell if anyone's good at scroll sawing. I've done it before. You'll probably be ashamed to watch me scroll sawing, but I eventually got the hang of it a bit more. I also had help from my father-in-law, who showed me a lot of techniques. He does a lot of woodwork and things like that, so he showed me how, or told me how to do a lot of things, which was a super helpful thing to have. Here I'm just doing like a test alignment just to see how it looks. Some of these curved bits are a bit more tricky to get, but we got them. Here's how it looks when it's kind of roughly put together. Still got the paper on it. As you can see, the circles, I mean, I'm not a very good scroll saw user. They weren't really as round as I would have liked, so we went ahead and we used hole saws. I think these are ideally made for cutting a hole into something rather than cutting the circle that you want. But we went ahead and cut the circles that we did want and then sanded them up a bit. There's a bit of roughness on there. Flick the coin, but you can see it looks a lot better. Here I'm using a belt sander. Again, if you use foam board or something like that, you wouldn't need to do this, or polystyrene. This is just the necessity of using wood. Yeah, you don't have to do it like this. And I'm sure anyone who's woodwork savvy watching this would know better ways to do every stage of this, I'm sure, and I'd recommend you do that if you're going to try a project like this. Looks a lot better with most of the paper taken off, which is good. Yeah, you can see it kind of coming together. Here I'm just using some PVA. I had asked, should I not use wood glue, but as it's just an interior use project, apparently PVA is fine, and it seems like that's the case as well, so happy days. There you go, another little preview there. And another little preview. Getting some PVA off the edges. It oozes out. Look at this for clamp porn. This is the collection of clamps that I had at my disposal. Probably too many clamps. I mean, I've never seen so many clamps. My dad used to have a hardware shop, and I've never seen so many clamps. They're like massive clamps. Look at the size of those, like making a piano or something. Anyway, clamping it together. Getting as many little pinch points on it as you can. I had considered putting some wood between the clamp and the project, let's call it, just to protect the face, but I didn't in the end. And in the end, it wasn't a problem. But it could be if you're using maybe like stronger clamps and softer wood, something like that. Took actually a lot of fiddling to get the clamping the circle right, because whenever the pressure went on, it would actually move the two layers. Here it is dry. There's some little bits there. What I was going to do, because I'm going to sand it next, but first use wood filler to fill in any of those gaps. The gaps are very small. You could probably get away without doing this stage, but I just wanted to kind of... I'd never used wood filler before, and I wanted to kind of try it. You know, I had it. Apparently, it was quick setting. I mean, it was probably hard within an hour. Probably quicker, but I checked it an hour later. So I'm just basically buttering it on. And pressing it in, putting a lot of downwards pressure so that a lot of it gets into the gaps, or as much as possible gets into the gaps. But it really is like putting peanut butter. Here I am being silly, little pose. But yeah, it was really like, you know, if you put mortar on a brick or something before, it was kind of like that, or putting peanut butter. Here you can see that some of the nice sort of edges we got after using the filler and the sander, which is good. Really nice. Now here I'm taking away some of the PVA that dried in the little... oh no, what I'm doing here is, so there's actually an imperfection that I just pointed at. Rather than having one imperfection on, like, you know, a pristine piece, I'm now actually adding other imperfections in order to hide the one that was an accident. If you know what I mean. It's like, you know, just so that this one mistake doesn't stand out, I'm actually throwing a few more mistakes in there so that it looks like a kind of aging effect. Priming it, I use just normal primer that I use for all my models with the airbrush. Again, you could probably just paint it with any paint that you wanted. You could wet blend or dry blend colors. You could use spray paint. There's a lot of ways to do this. This is just the way I decided to do it with the tools that I had. First step I'm doing is actually throwing down some green. It's the kind of main color, green and black of this, and I just wanted to put green on there. I was kind of sick of doing primer. I find priming models really boring, like spraying them with primer, so I just wanted to get some color on there as well. You can kind of see even now it's starting to look like, you know, something kind of Necron-y. It's kind of cool. I like it, even now. Bit more of a close-up there. Getting a few color gradients on just so that it's not one flat color. You could do a flat color if you wanted, but I just wanted to have a bit of, what's the word? Some different colors on there, and different luminosity of the color and things like that. Basically trying to make it as close to the original reference art that that I could really. People use reference art all the time in, like, you know, games industry artists and things like that, concept artists. Like, yeah, if you're painting something, like, use reference art, look at the image that you're trying to use as inspiration. Here I'm adding glow. If you see that central glow, that was like a very slight lighter gradient that I added after doing the black and the green. So these are LED lights that I got on Amazon. You get like 4 in a box. They're really cheap. I'll put a link in the description. In fact, I'll put a link for everything in the description so you can go ahead and buy it. I wanted to see if I can airbrush a colour onto the perspex and let it soften the light as it comes through, you know, a bit of diffusion. But though the white didn't work, it was too opaque. None of the light came through, and also the green didn't either. So I didn't really know what to do here, but then I just thought, you know, sometimes the easiest approach can be okay. Again, people probably rolling their eyes if they're good at woodworking and things like that here, or good at projects like this. This is the first time I did it, and I just sort of went with what I kind of thought I could make work in the limited time I had. So I needed to get those circles onto the same plane, if you like, as the main body. So here I'm cutting out just some polythene. I think it's polythene, it's like plastic sheeting anyway. I was originally thought just use a packaging or something, you know, when you buy plastic packaging like that. I was just going to use some of that, but we didn't have any, and we did actually have a roll of that. Again, PVA, saving the day. Recommend you get lots of PVA. Little trick on PVA, if you go in the kids section, kids and crafts section of many shops, you'll find the same glue for cheaper than you will in the home improvements department, and it's absolutely fine. Painting it on, kind of messy. I got it too close to the edges, I think. Even when I was doing it, I was aware of it, but I just went ahead and did it anyway because I knew I would get stuff oozing out. So yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and stick it on. Plop. On it goes. Get the circle in the right place. Here the artiste looks for perfection. Are we happy with that, sir? Nope. Yeah. There we go. Whoop, magically teleporting PVA on there, and an old hand plane. Really old hand plane. Came back later. I think this was about 2 hours later. And there you go, it's stuck on. There's some plastic peeking over the sides, but we're going to deal with that. I was quite surprised how white it's set. Like, it's really white on the back there, and it really had set. I thought it would still be kind of liquidy when it was that white, but no. Quite a big lip on the bottom there, miscalculated that. But that's okay, because we've got a Stanley knife, and it's very easy to cut this stuff. So the next stage, I'm going to make the backing. So for the backing, I'm just going to trace the shape of, or I just traced the shape of the artifact, and then went in 5mm with this sort of line making tool. I'm not sure what you call it, but it actually creates an indentation in it, just to bring those edges in, so that the base, the wooden base for it, wouldn't be the exact same size as the actual face, so that it would just be a bit smaller. This is like an old piece of table leg or something. I got help here with the bandsaw, because John, who is helping with me with the project, is a lot better than I am. Sanding it off here. I think that's called rounding out or something, that one, I was told. It's a pretty good technique. Again, getting help with the bandsaw here. The sanding I did a couple more times, and I did before this stage so that you can get more pressure on the sander. First time I did it, I was told it looked rough as a robber's dog, which I'd never heard before, but that's a good saying. That's yours to keep. Here we go, trying out the really, what's the word, primitive lighting in there. Clamped the bit where we'd cut into it together and glued it all together, and let's see how it came out. It's quite solid. This is like the day after we started gluing it. It was really solid. Made a cavity in there for the lights and things, and also for the battery pack. Here I'm doing a little test fit just to see how it goes in. I also had the idea of creating a reflective backing using foil. Again, this is very crude. Maybe like more of an orc Necron what's the word, artifact than anything made by super technical robots. But I just wanted to do like a test, You know, lights often have like silver backing, and there you go. I wanted to also do two different versions. Which one do you think looks better? Leave a comment if you think that with looks better or without looks better. I'd be interested to see what people think. Yeah, so in order to keep things in, I just I was running out of time actually, and I just went for some polythene at the back for the lower half, just to keep everything in, and also to keep the battery pack in. It's really not very fine, but hey, look at the final piece. That looks all right, doesn't it? Just don't look around the back. Yeah, I've quite enjoyed it. Making it, I think it looks cool. Some of the little speckles on it, they look like stars in a kind of nebula. They're not deliberate. I thought about dry brushing it, but I didn't. But anyway, this is how it's turned out in the end. Let me know in the comments what you think. Do you think I'm the world's worst woodworker? That's entirely possible. Or do you think it was okay? Here's some bonus downtime footage. Leaning definitely helps. There you go. Thanks again for watching. Peacetime painting.